Hello friends. I wanted to sit down and have a talk with you about goals. So, right, we're coming up on Christmas, which means we're coming up on New Year's, and I'm not going to be posting videos after Christmas, and so this is my chance to talk about New Year's goals with you. And I wanted to talk about the three different kinds of goals that I tend to set. So the first one is lifestyle goals. The second are like plans, things that I'm going to get done. And the third are more like visions or hopes and dreams. And I want to break them down individually because I think it's important that we distinguish the three. I think oftentimes we neglect lifestyle goals, meaning goals about how we want to feel in our life, what our life looks like to us on a personal level, and things that are not measurable or metric based, right? Things that we do for the joy of doing them because of how they make us feel in our life. Then maybe some of us are really good at lifestyle goals, right? Like that comes naturally. Pleasure, joy, fun, those things come naturally, but maybe getting to a plan is hard. Maybe a plan is really something that has a start and an end, or a start and like a publish date, right? Like that's like building a website or launching an online course or writing a book. These are plans, right? These are things that are, there's a start, there's a finish line, and there's all of these steps in between. And then we get into like visions. Like, what is a vision? What does that mean? What's the importance of a vision? And when I talk about vision, I think a lot of times people talk about like it in terms of like manifestation or positive vibes or positive intent or knowing where you want to go and like letting the universe provide for you. And I want to get a little bit more into that as well and how I think about that and how I work with that. So let's start with lifestyle goals. So as a reminder, lifestyle goals are about how I want to feel in my life. So I have several different ways in which I check in with my lifestyle. Mostly I do this on a quarterly basis, but I also do this once a month with core desired feelings. So I get this term core desired feelings from Danielle Laporte in her book, The Desire Map. And it's all about setting goals based off of how you want to feel, not what you want to achieve. And this is so helpful because so often we're writing goals that set us up for failure in how we want to feel, right? So if I want to feel, we've talked about this in previous Vlogmas vlogs, like my core desired feelings right now are cozy, content, and creative. So when I went back and I was looking at the day I planned for myself on Saturday, I was like, this is writing me out of my ability to feel cozy, content, and creative because I'm hustling too much. I'm coming at it from a different, too intensive a perspective. And so checking in with those core desired feelings once a month, I usually pick 3 feelings that I would like to have for the month. And then when I look at the plans that I have for the month and the things I have going on, I ask myself, is this pointing me back to those feelings? I've also found it incredibly helpful when doing that list journal that we talked about in that previous vlog on the reset vlog. That has been so helpful because every once in a while now, like every couple of days, I'll check in and just go, how can I feel this way today? And then how did I feel this way today at the end of the day? And that has been really helpful for me to just check in with like, am I living the life I want to live? Next, let's talk a little bit about quarterly planning in terms of lifestyle goals. I check in with this in 4 unique ways. So the first one is my ideal day. So if I look at what does a dream day in my life look like from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, it's optimistic but realistic, right? I don't all of a sudden not have a kid. Like I can just do whatever I want. It's using the limitations that I have while also thinking like, how can I improve this, maybe 10-15% to be closer to what I need right now. And I check in on this quarterly because it's unrealistic that this would be consistent for an entire year. Maybe sometimes, I keep it the same year to year or quarter to quarter, but a lot of times like my lifestyle changes, what I need changes, those core desired feelings change. And so my daily schedule may change in response, right? If I want a cozy, content, creative season, then my day's gonna have a lot more downtime. If I want an invigorating, energized, and productive season, it's gonna have a completely different task. It's gonna have a lot more like probably socializing, a lot more, clear objectives to what a day can hold. Similarly, also at the quarter, I check in on what is an ideal week for me. So what does Monday look like? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So for right now, for me, Monday is a really good admin day. Tuesdays and Thursdays tend to be like head down, headphones on, getting work done days. Wednesday's kind of free for all, like we never know what's gonna happen. I have therapy that day, so I just kind of let it be more flexible. And then Friday is what I'm calling my CEO days, which is like moving the needle on my business forward, being future oriented with my business. Typically Saturday is my reset day where I get chores and tasks done, and then Sunday is nothing. I do nothing if at all possible. So that is how I look at the ideal day and the ideal week. And then from there, I do a vision every quarter. And so what that looks like is just a journal entry that's kind of written in present tense as though it's the future. So today I woke up and blank, and I talk about how I feel in my life, what's going on in my life, what I want, what I envision a really good day in my life looking like 3 months from now. And this is really helpful in getting into the core of like what I actually want. Instead of focusing on what other people are doing or what my competition is doing or what I think I'm supposed to be doing, this really aligns me with like, what do I want? What feels good to me? If I could do anything, how would that look? What would a day in my life look like if all was well? I've done this with some of you in coaching calls. I do this in the Brave Collective. I really think this tool is so useful in getting clarity into blocking out a lot of the noise that we get outside of ourselves and really getting into who am I, what do I want, and how do I feel. From there, we can start to get into that planning. So we'll use that as information for what are some more like clear objectives, right? So if in 3 months, I envision that I have written a book in that time, then I better start writing a book, right? Like that's gonna turn into a plan. Or if I envision that I've retired, or if I, in 3 months, we're trying to go, what could optimistically happen in 3 months? I'm giving kind of big examples here, but I'm working out every day. Well, how do I start that process now so that at the end of this season, I have plans in place to make that possible for me? All right. And then our final thing when it comes to lifestyle goals that I do every single quarter are the 7 dimensions of wellness. So I have my notes here. I'm going to read them out to you. The first one is spiritual. The second is social, environmental, emotional, intellectual, physical, and occupational. And I just go through each of those and say like what's working, what's not working, and what do I want to do next. And this is really just assessing like, am I well? Like in general, socially, am I doing well? Occupationally, do I feel good about where I am? Am I satisfied? And it just is like kind of the idea that we have these really clear areas, and if we kind of tend to them, and if we tend to them reasonably well, then we will be well. Now that being said, I don't think it's realistic to have like be doing perfectly well in all of those areas at one time. I think in general, per quarter, I typically have like 1 to 2 or 3 that I'm like, these are gonna take priority right now. These are in the most need of support. So they're gonna get the majority of my attention, and I'm gonna kind of let some other things go on autopilot for a minute. I think sometimes we can get really stuck into one dimension, like my occupation's going so well, but then my relationships are being neglected, or maybe my physical health is like killer, but I am struggling a lot to have like a sense of meaning in life or purpose in the world. So those are the 7 dimensions of wellness, and the final step for me and what I check in on every single quarter in terms of lifestyle. Now let's get into plans. So plans, like I said, are things that have a really clear start date and end date, or maybe they just have a really clear publishing date, like a book or a YouTube channel or something like that, where there's something tangible that's gonna come out of this, some sort of like really clear objective. Call them plans instead of goals, because I am not a goal setter. And I think, this whole thing is called goal setting, but I'm not a goal setter. I do not like to leave things up to metrics based off of other people or dependent upon other people. Meaning, instead of saying, I'm gonna have 100,000 YouTube followers this time next year, I say I'm gonna post a video every single week for the next year. Do you see the difference there? Like one is like what I'm in control of, the other one is like what other people do. And I think that gets more into the vision, the manifestation realm, which we'll talk about in a second. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I don't think that this should replace your plans or be the tone setter for how motivated you feel, because so much of this is subject to everything else in the world, and that we really, when we're trying to get something done, need to focus instead on the plan and not as much on the result that we are hoping to receive, if that makes sense. Because this, being metric based, can be really discouraging. It's like out of our control, and it can cause us to give up on these plans if we're so focused over here on the metrics. So maybe for me, I look at my 7 dimensions of wellness, I look at my vision for the year, I look at my ideal day, my ideal week, and I realize that within that, in order to achieve that, I might need to take more sponsorships on, or I might need to start a course, or maybe I really, like in my heart of hearts, know that I have a book in me that I want to write. That's where plans come in. That's where we go, okay, so for me, if I'm honest, like the beginning of the year, I'm looking at what are 3 plans that I can make happen this year? Like what are 3 big things that I can do? Because I typically think I can do 1 per quarter, realistically. And the last quarter of the year, let's be honest, is a wash. Like I often am not producing something completely new. I'm trying to tie up loose ends. I'm trying to just survive. I'm not as much like, let's move the needle forward in October, November, and December. Like that's not typically where I'm at. So realistically, January to April, I can make something. May to June, I can make something. May to July, August to, what are the quarters? The first 3 quarters of the year, I gotta go get them energy and I can make something happen. And then that last quarter of the year, I'm typically like tapped out, don't have anything to give. So 3 objectives for the year. Now, I am not under the illusion that those objectives will not change. I very much believe that like things change. What happens at the beginning of the year could alter the way that I want to end the year. And so I have a lot of check-in times with myself, right? I check in once a year in January. Then I check in at the beginning of each quarter, but I treat quarters differently if you've seen. So for me, December, January, and February are winter. So I'm gonna check in January, and then I'm gonna check in again in March. And from there, I'm going to check in also every single month, every single week, and every single day. In these plans that I have, right, I have 3, let's say I have 3 big plans at the beginning of the year. I assign each of those plans a quarter in which I intend to do those things. And then I break them down, and each of those objectives that I have for the quarter, I'm gonna break into 3 sections that I'm gonna do each month. And then each of those 3 sections, I'm gonna break down into smaller bits that I give to each week. And then I take that task for the week and I break it down into smaller bits that I'm gonna do each day. And this is how I move the needle forward on the things that I wanna do, instead of thinking, I really wanna do this thing, I don't know why I don't do it, or I'm really overwhelmed by it. This is how I do it. I break it down, I break it down, I break it down, and then I assign dates and times. So maybe we can do like a little exercise on what that could look like. So let's say I wanna write a book. Okay, that book that I wanna write, I'm gonna shoot for that book having 12 chapters. If that book has 12 chapters, that means I need to write 4 chapters a month, which means I need to write 1 chapter a week. So I'm gonna write on Monday, edit on Tuesday, write more on Wednesday, edit more on Thursday, and then wrap up that chapter on Friday, right? That's like a way that I might approach that. So in the planning phase, this is where we're gonna see what we call SMART goals. This is where a SMART goal is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant to your life, and time-bound. So when you're looking at a plan, you're gonna wanna make sure, okay, like, I'm not gonna say I wanna move my body more unless it's just a general sense. Like sometimes for me, I do say that. I say, I would like to move my body more because I don't want to put a plan in place. I want to be more fluid about it. And that's incredibly reasonable. But if you're like, no, I seriously want to move my body more, I want to take this really seriously and make it extremely important to me, then you're going to want to make it a plan, and you're going to want to make it smart. You're going to make it specific. So what does moving your body mean? You're gonna make it measurable, like, okay, how often am I gonna do this? You're gonna make it achievable, right? You're gonna be reasonable about it. You're not gonna all of a sudden start waking up at 4 in the morning. Instead, you're gonna go, okay, I have a really clear window at 3 p.m. every day. I can fit it in there. That's reasonable. I'm not gonna go 7 days a week. I'm gonna shoot for 3 is more reasonable than going from like 0 to 7, right? I'm going to make it relevant. I'm not going to say like, I'm gonna become a parkour enthusiast and that's going to be my fitness method when like I'm scared of heights, right? I'm going to make it relevant to my life, like something I will actually do, and then I'm going to make it time bound. Like, what does this look like? When is this, you know, when am I going to do this? How is this going to look? When am I complete? That's when we're looking at a plan, right? So we have our lifestyle. This is general. Like, that's when I would say I want to move my body more. That's more lifestyle. Like, I'm generally aware of how I want this to be. And then I can take some of those lifestyle elements and I can turn them into plans if I want to. And realistically, you're gonna be able to achieve like maybe 3 plans at a time. And I think those 3 plans cannot be all in the same dimension of wellness, right? I can't have like 3, I mean, you could, but it's gonna get you kind of stuck, right? You could have 3 occupational goals going in 1 quarter if you wanted to, but then a lot of other things in your life are going to get neglected. So I would kind of encourage you to say, all right, what's 1 occupational goal? Maybe what's 1 relational goal? What's 1 health goal or spiritual goal or emotional goal? Like, whatever it is for you, set those as plans and put them in place.
Hi, this is Editing Sarah Jane. I just popped in because I'm thinking about how one of the major things that I want people to know when it comes to goal setting is to consider, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this because I think there's something wrong with me that I need to fix? And I just want to invite you into the space of doing things, setting goals, setting intentions from a place of like, is this nourishing? Is this supportive? Is this, you know, giving me more of what I need to have healthy relationships, a happy life, feel like I'm pursuing my vision for life, versus like there is, if I don't fix these things, then I'm unworthy of love or success or ease or rest. That we should do the things in our lives like this, setting these intentions, not from a place that there's something wrong with you, but instead from a place of, how can I be better supported by me? That's all.
Right, let's talk over here about like visions, manifestations, and like metric-based goals. So often what I see people do is they set really ambitious goals for themselves that are completely metric-based, meaning they are dependent on other people and their response. Meaning we're putting our sense of value, our sense of like worth, our sense of like ability to achieve and accomplish in the hands of randos. So meaning like, okay, I'm going to, and those randos could be like our metabolism, like even. So instead of saying like, I want to get 100,000 followers on Instagram, saying, right, I'm gonna post every day on Instagram. Because you can't really be responsible for how people choose to respond. You can only be responsible for what you put out. I think the same thing happens in diet culture, where we say like, I'm gonna lose 100 pounds instead of I'm gonna feel healthy and happy and energized. We focus on like some sort of a tangible metric, and weight can be that to us. But what if instead we focus on like, I want to be healthy, I want to feel good in my body, I want to feel energized, I want to have a supportive relationship to food. And then maybe I put a plan in place and I say, in order to do that, I know I need to move my body every day. So what does that look like in practice? But instead of saying that if I move my body every day and I don't lose 100 pounds, then I give up, right? That's what people tend to do. That's what these metric-based goals do to us. They make us think we're not doing the thing we agreed to do if we're not getting the results that we think we want based off of a metric that is probably typically arbitrary. And then we get discouraged and we give up. But here's the reality is, right, like You never know when your time is your time. You never know what's gonna happen, but we do need to treat the things that we wanna do as things that are important to us, whether other people recognize that or not, or whether our body responds the way we hope it will respond or not. We love ourselves, we treat our bodies well, we do the things that we intend to do, even if we're not getting this like metric-based result that we think we want. And then the doing of the thing becomes its own reward. And I think that that's where we get kind of mixed up, is we get so focused on the metrics that we forget that the doing of the thing is the fun thing. That's the reward. That is like the thing to focus on. So I'm not the biggest fan of these kind of goals, except doesn't mean that we don't set vision for them, right? So a lot of times we set vision in like a manifestation way. We say like, okay, I would like I'm gonna have 100,000 followers on Instagram. And we set that intention into the universe. And I know that there's this whole belief that like there's like a magic that happens if you stay in like a positive vortex, and then it attracts like, and you're gonna draw in the good things that happen to you. I don't believe in any of that. That seems made up, I'm gonna be honest. However, what I do believe in is in positive intention. I do believe that what we put out into the universe becomes what we recognize in our life, right? If I say, I want to have 100,000 followers on Instagram, well then all of a sudden I'm going to pay attention to, okay, I agree that I'm going to post every day on Instagram. I'm committed to the process. But I'm also, all of a sudden I have this idea of like what I want. So I'm going to pay attention to if I'm getting that or not. And I'm going to notice what content gets picked up well, what content doesn't. Let's say I put a certain kind of house on my vision board at the beginning of the year, and then I'm looking for a house in 3 years. I'm probably going to be more drawn to a house that looks similar to the one I put on the vision board, because at some point I recognize my subconscious said this is what we're going for, and so I'm gonna be more inclined to find it. I'm more inclined to say yes to opportunities that are going to send me in the direction that I've said I wanted to go. So while I don't think it's like magic that like you just put your intentions out and then everything just falls in your lap, I think you decide what you want and then you're more inclined to take the steps to get there. I have a lot of thoughts on manifestation. I think there's also like a lack of recognition of privilege that comes with that mindset. There's also like, for me, my anxiety ate me alive when I was believing in that, because if you can't think positively, then everything in your life is going to fall apart. And oh no, I'm worrying about that, which means I'm not thinking positively, and it just feeds itself, right? So a lot of times too, you have these like very privileged people talking about how everything just fell into place, and they're not talking about how like they fell into place because their parents like paid for them to do it. All of that to say that while there's not anything wrong with having these more like metric-based, manifestation-based goals, I think hold them in their accurate place, which is just cast the vision, maybe at the beginning of the quarter, at the beginning of the year, but then really focus on your plans and your lifestyle when it comes to where you're putting your energy, right? Don't put your energy in, am I getting 100,000 followers in the timeline that I think I should based off of something really arbitrary. Instead say like, I'm gonna focus on like what I said I would do in order to get there, and let the rest fall into place. And then we can analyze it, make adjustments, but like I'm focused on my plan. And then use the lifestyle goals, the lifestyle information as the information that you need to create the plan, right? So how do I want to feel? What do I want my life to look like? I'm going to make my plans off of that instead of the other way around, right? So this is how I think about it. Maybe it's a little bit complicated, but hopefully it brings you a little bit more ease, a little bit more freedom, and inspires you to set some goals, check in with your lifestyle, and cast a vision for 2023. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see ya tomorrow for the next one.